Well, I must say I'm not surprised, but it doesn't get any easier, does it? Manchester United won, Brighton and Hove Albion 3 in the Premier League. United have now lost 6 games out of 12 at home in the Premier League this season. 2 wins in 10 under Ruben Amorim in the Premier League as well. And he has said he knows that, and the players know that, and has even said, has suggested that this could be the worst Manchester United team in history. It certainly feels like that at the moment. And getting out of this mess very quickly is just not something that I think is going to be happening. So there's plenty of work to do both on the pitch and off the pitch, because Brighton, who are a very, very well-run football club, from top to bottom, have turned up to Old Trafford and mustered. Well, they've taken 3 points. They deserve 3 points. And Manchester United only mustered one shot on target themselves, and that was a penalty which Bruno Fernandes scored. And there's a hell of a lot of problems. That I will say that. And having watched Manchester United for 30 odd years, this is a very interesting position to be in. 2/3 of that were trophy-laden, successful years, and the last third of it has been mostly misery, just ploughing on downwards. And United currently find themselves in 13th in the Premier League after 22 matches. So it's just not it's not a good look at the moment, is it? And it's really difficult to see where the solutions are going to come from. But I think this podcast today will be about when we can maybe expect those solutions or hope for those solutions. And we just might have to adjust our expectations and thinking. Now, me saying that, adjusting expectations, is usually, it comes with bad connotations. Accepting mediocrity. No, this is not that. This is not that at all. This is just accepting reality. And in order to get out of the mediocrity and poor awfulness that we are all experiencing watching Manchester United at the moment, things need to be done. There needs to be deep measures taken, and a lot of difficult decisions need to be taken. And unfortunately, you can't do that in the middle of a season. So what I think we're looking at, and when I talk about expectations, is just maybe it would just be easier and just be a little bit better if we take the approach of not actually expecting to go into games like that and winning. Just simply because we know that the problems that United have, we know that the problems that Ruben Amorim has, coaching and training and finding players who are in this squad who are capable of playing the way that he wants to play football. I think with every game that I watch at the moment, it becomes more obvious to me that there are players in this team that maybe won't be here in a couple of years' time. Even players that I thought would be are, having a difficult time getting up to speed with this. And yeah, some will be fixed in training. Some will take some time to be able to adapt to the system. Some players need to be fitter. Some need to make better decisions. But obviously, I think what the big takeaway for me is, after today again, is we're going through another rebuild, and it's going to be a big one. How many of these players are going to be here in 2 years' time? I don't know. But until that's going to happen, we just have to kind of look at it and maybe just expect that this is the way that it's going to be for a while, because there are other clubs who are very, very well run and have had a number of years putting good decision on top of good decision on top of good decision, and you see it play out on the pitch. And United, unfortunately, have had the reverse of that. So what Ruben Amorim is trying to fix at the moment is a malaise that I don't think is going to be fixed in January. It's not going to be, no matter how much people shout and scream about spend money on all of these new players right now, immediately, and back the coach and back Ruben Amorim. The fact is that the ownership of the last 20 years or so has put United in a difficult position through seriously bad decisions, very expensive decisions, and now all of that plan is having to be reversed. And Ruben Amorim is quite open and honest about how much work needs to be done here. So I think that's at least one refreshing thing that we are seeing out of all of this poorness and malaise And going from 1 week or 2 weeks where you play really well at Liverpool, who are the top team in the Premier League at the moment, and you play really well at Arsenal, who are the second best team in England at the moment per Premier League table points, going there and winning on penalties. And then Ruben Amorim warned, obviously, that the feeling was approaching the Southampton game that would be the difficult one. That would be the real test. And United were not particularly convincing in that game. Southampton created a hell of a lot of chances. Southampton were unlucky on the day until Ahmad ended up turning up and scoring a hat trick. United got out of jail that day because of the brilliance of one player. Today, they did not, because they met a team who are very, very good. And that's just the way that it is. And United are not very, very good. So it's going to take some time to fix that. And I think we just need to, with all the anger, disappointment, frustration, all of this stuff, the Promised Land podcast is here to remind you of the never too high, never too low. And this has taken me a little while to get right, I've got to say, because I go through all the same emotions, the disappointment, the frustration, and me producing a podcast when I feel those feelings is not going to give the best experience, because this is my level head generally, and I want to bring my level head to any recording that I do. But the Promised Land, a Manchester United podcast, is available on Apple, Spotify, and all of the audio platforms you may use. Please download it and subscribe to the podcast, and give it a 5-star review, and get in touch with me on social media at _Scott Saunders on X, TikTok, and Instagram. I'm also on Blue Sky as well. The link is in the description. And also, this is on YouTube. TPL MUFC is where you can find it, I believe, or the Promised Land, the Manchester United podcast. Please like the stream or like the video, leave a comment, and give the video a like as well. We go 3-4 times a week at the moment. Things are scaling up a bit, and there's plenty to do in future episodes because there's lots of transfer activity going on. And this is going to be another revamp of the team, and it has to start with players going out on loan by the looks of it. But I'll talk about Anthony, I'll talk about Tyrell Malacia, and I'll talk about Marcus Rashford probably in the next couple of days in the next episode. But today is about the Brighton game and what I learned from it. But it's also about this as well. I obviously have to mention this, as I've not recorded since the news emerged. But obviously, United lost one of their greatest over the last few days, Denis Law, one of the Holy Trinity with Best and Charlton. Such sad news to receive. When I found out, it kind of rocked me. It's one of those moments where you see it, and it kind of stops you, it jolts you, and it's really difficult to digest. And it's been a few days now for everyone to kind of get their head around this. But what a loss this is for football. What a loss this is for Manchester United. And, I think it's so difficult because this feeling lately has seemed to happen around United a lot. And it's obviously an awful feeling to lose so many great people around this football club in quite a short space of time. But what Man United do very well, outside of the problems that they do have, is the way that the tributes to the greatest people involved in this football club, the way that the class that is that they are dealt with is befitting of what Man United should be. And obviously, Denis Law was such a great ambassador for Manchester United, great football player, one of the greatest that has ever played for this football club, and cherished by football in general as well, and by so many people that he had an impact on, his teammates, Sir Alex Ferguson, so many supporters of certain ages and generations, those who watched him, those who were told about his greatness and the things he did by their parents or their grandparents. There's so many legends that this football club has had, and Denis Law was one of the greatest. And it was such a nice moment to see the tribute that was given to him before the game at Old Trafford today. Sir Alex Ferguson played a part, obviously, with the wreath, and the the words before the applause were just beautiful. They really were. And, it kind of stirs this sadness in you, but at the same time, you celebrate the life and the achievements of such an amazing footballer and an amazing person. You kind of have that moment where it's sad, but at the same time, you kind of installed with so much pride, and you're kind of proud to be involved and like have an affinity to this football club when people like this and like Denis Law are honored, and the way that I love the song that the crowd sing. The crowd sang during the applause as well. Will never die, and I think that's it was really, really beautiful. I just wanted to say that. And look, it's such terrible news to lose Denis Law, and such sad news to lose one of Manchester United's greatest ever players, Denis Law, who passed away just recently. A wonderful tribute to him at Old Trafford today. Do have to talk about the game, and I think what the big thing for me was today, you look, there will be podcasts that shout and scream, and there'll be videos of people that shout and scream about fix it right now, fix it right now. We need to throw 200 million at this player. Gyökeres is going to fix everything, or and like all of these quick fixes that people can suggest. And look, I would love to see Manchester United do some business this month and spend some money on players that are able to fit Ruben Amorim's system. I would love it. But I think the stark reality of this is that we are not in a position at the moment, and I've said this on recent podcasts as well, that if it was as simple as Manchester United just spending money at the moment to get themselves out of this mess, I'm sure that they would have done it. But at the same time, the whole sell to buy thing it's incredibly true, and that is it's not it's not news that anybody would like to kind of digest and accept. But the fact of the matter is, United have been plunged through so many bad, expensive decisions in the transfer market, with sacking managers, with being unable to sell players, with signing players like Casemiro and Antony, who cost about 150 million between them, just after United had lost 4-0 at Brentford in Erik ten Hag's second game in charge. There are so many decisions like that, which United are now having to pay for because, well, they had to pay for it in the first place. They're doubly paying for it now because obviously Casemiro's not getting a minute of football. He could end up leaving this month, and Antony is one of the players who could leave in the next few days. Word is that he is very close to a loan deal to join Real Betis, and there's some interest in him from elsewhere. But that's the position that United are in at the moment. And the big thing for me today, the big thing for me watching this was there will be episodes of different channels which talk about like the bad decisions that players made in certain moments. This has to change, of course. Or Andre Onana dropped in the clanger. Yes, he did. And that is unfortunately what we have somehow come to expect, because and that's what Andre Onana has been doing. He did that a lot in his first season. That's a player that concentration has to be there. And we know that these players switch off in certain moments. And what we're seeing is just, I think, is the culmination at Manchester United this season in particular, and last season as well, of years of bad decisions now playing out on the football pitch. And every year that goes by, it seems to be getting worse and worse and gradually worse, with maybe 1 year of when, in Ten Hag's first season, United won the League Cup and he came third, and everybody thought that this might be the turning point. Turns out it wasn't. United fall deeper. United end up parting with a manager who's signed a lot of players. United fall deeper. And now Ruben Amorim is the one who's being tasked with having to turn around the mess and fix it with players that aren't really suited to him, that United have spent a lot of money on. It's not as simple as just finding a buyer for Casemiro on one of the highest wages in world football, because there are not other clubs out there who can stomach and take wages like that. And this is a problem that's been a long time coming. And I'm talking about Casemiro. He didn't even play today. He's been overtaken in the pecking order by Toby Collier from the academy, and that says it all. Really, that says it all. And look, I obviously do wish that Toby Collier has a breakthrough few matches, but like when one of the greatest midfielders over the last decade is not getting any minutes at 32 or 33 years old, you know that it just underlines the reminder really that yes, United have made so many bad decisions, and these are the moments where they are paying for them. And Ruben Amorim is the one who is trying to get his ideas across. He's done the thing where he's come in and he is absolutely adamant. He is not changing his philosophy and changing his ideas and changing his system. He's not going to do that because he thinks that down the line, he will in the end be like not as far down the line. Unless this pain comes through now, then in the future, let's say he's still here in 2 years, United might be going through the same situation or have the same problems if they don't just deal with them head on. And I think that's what United are trying to do at the moment. Amorim's trying to do, and the people who've been put in place to make transfers, this kind of thing, that is what they are trying to do as well. And unfortunately, United just in a difficult position of sell to buy. And selling players who are underperforming is a challenging thing, especially when they're on massive wages as well. So United have plenty of those. But I think I was talking about this just now. I could talk about the mistakes that I saw on the pitch today, the lack of concentration. United conceded a goal from a set piece that in the end was disallowed because, of a foul in the build-up. But these are all issues and problems that I've seen so many times before that I could just keep talking about. And yes, I could. I could come on here and say, this needs to change and this needs to change. I already knew it needed to change. Everybody knows this already needs to change. And I think we just have to kind of grin and bear it and just let the people who've been brought in, the experts who've been brought in to, and I'm talking about the new people that have been installed here. And that's not been without its own problems on its own, because I know I'm talking about the people like in charge of things like Omar Barada, Jason Wilcox, and Ruben Amorim and Christopher Pavel. These are people who are going to need time to make good decisions, and only through a series of good decisions and preferably inexpensive decisions, so they have to be doubly good. That's how United are going to get themselves out of this mess. It's going to take a while. These aren't quick fixes. These aren't 200 million pounds worth of January signings that Manchester City are making just because they lost a few games. United aren't in that position. They're not backed by a state. And obviously that was an argument that people had. I still firmly think that United will come through this in the end. And that's unwavering with me. It might not be for everyone, but I do feel like the interests of the people in charge of the club at the moment is to get the football team playing better. And it's not happening at the moment, and it will take some time. But look, as I say, you can look at the mistakes that were made today and look at all the bad decisions that were made. And I can talk about that. But just after this break, I'm going to talk about something that I think the big difference between Manchester United and Brighton and Hove Albion that was there in plain sight to see today. Brighton tweeted after the game, 6 wins out of 7 against Manchester United. And it just seems like every time they come to Old Trafford or every time they play United at the Amex or whatever, it just seems like Brighton have United's number. And it doesn't get any easier to stomach. But I've got to say, I wasn't surprised by what I saw today at all. And I'm sure there's many of you listening or watching this that weren't either. It doesn't make it any easier to kind of accept or to, just digest and take on. But the fact of the matter is, Brighton are a much better run club than Manchester United, and they have been for a long, long time. And what we saw today was more proof of that. United are well behind Brighton in the league table at the moment, and Brighton have ascended through a series of great decisions and good decisions and inexpensive decisions, which turned into expensive decisions in terms of profit for them. They've got a lot of things right, and that's from the top. So everything from the top ends up playing out on the pitch if you're a good and well-run football club who have good people in place making good decisions. And what we saw today for me was, as much as it was Manchester United versus Brighton, this was well-run club versus poorly run football club. And the evidence of it was all over the pitch. And I see, obviously, Ruben Amorim is going to come in for criticism. I know he's going to. And I think the big thing today was that everybody realized, oh God, how many of these players need to be shipped out, and we need to go through another rebuilding process. How many of these? And like, I have that same feeling as well. Another rebuilding process. How long is this going to take? Of course. But the thing that's changed, and look, I don't want to give them a pass, but obviously, I think what we saw in the summer was obviously Dan Ashworth, Barada, and Wilcox were put in place, and the decision was made to keep Erik ten Hag. And we saw a summer transfer window of signings that I will say maybe some were for the future. I think maybe Manuel Ugarte, because Ten Hag didn't obviously want to use him the minutes that he played under him. There was some that were signed. It seemed like there was a power battle going on there. And Matthias de Ligt obviously arrived. He has links to Ten Hag as well. What we saw in the summer, I think, was a lack of clear decision making and a lack of, or infighting, let's just say. And obviously, I didn't do a podcast when this happened, but Dan Ashworth's departure was a massive shock to everybody. It really was. 5 months after coming in, after chasing him for 6 months and trying to get him to sign, or potentially longer, possibly longer. I think that for me was all of the proof there, really. The decision that was made to keep Erik ten Hag, and which I backed at the time, and I won't shy away from that, because I felt like he had earned at least a shot at being able to work under a structure that was new. That was what I said, and I won't back down on that. It was the wrong decision, obviously. That's the way that played out, and people get things wrong. But the fact that Ashworth ended up leaving, I think, was maybe as a result of that decision setting United back so far. I think that was, people weren't on the same page there, and maybe that was down to who the manager was, and then when the decision was made around Ten Hag and Ruben Amorim came in, obviously we saw Ashworth leave soon after that. So what I think we're seeing now is Jason Wilcox is in the signing pitches. Jason Wilcox is making the decisions. Christopher Vivell, who I've talked about recently, they're talking about potentially a permanent role for him. And Omar Barada is obviously in charge and has worked at Manchester City as well. And Amorim is the coach, who has a group of players that is just not suited to his team. So what I think we need to see now is there will be another rebuild. There has to be. And that's the problem. That's a big problem. Obviously it is, but I think there's no other way around it. But what we saw in the Brighton game was Brighton can sign a footballer because of certain qualities that they identify from the very top. And there's a clear system and a clear structure in place there. And people can be interchangeable within that structure, but the idea remains the same. And that then boils down to, who do we sign? What qualities do they have? How cheaply can we get them for? How quickly can they integrate into this system that we want to play? And they've maintained through changes in managers, and obviously they've had some down periods, but through changes in managers, they have managed to continue their ascent from having to survive relegation to mid-table to, and playing good football during the process as well, mind, to Europe as well. And they've had some struggles in Europe when they were in it, but the progress is still there. And Brighton are just a one of a number of clubs that are starting to get this right. You see Bournemouth now, who are doing fantastically well. Just went and absolutely smashed Newcastle this weekend, 4-1. And they have a coach and have been signing players who are capable, physically and mentally capable of playing Premier League football. Now, these are players who have joined clubs with less pressure on them, obviously, but what they do is they are able to express themselves and play some of their best football in the Premier League. And the Premier League is more competitive than ever because there are clubs like this who've made lots of good decisions and want to do things the right way. And now, clubs like Manchester United, who've made bad decisions for a long, long time, are being exposed. And when we talk about the rebuild having to happen again, and well, Ruben Amorim plays a back three or a back five. We're gonna have to sign loads of wing backs, and we need central midfielders, and our defenders can't push up enough. The ones that we've got, they're not proactive enough. They're not front foot enough. And they have to learn that. Oh, wait, you actually might not be able to learn that. You're going to have to be replaced. You need a striker who's going to score you goals. Look, a lot of that team isn't fit to play what Ruben Amorim wants to play. And I think that's been painfully obvious over the last few weeks. It's more than I thought it would be. But obviously, there is still time to turn this around for some with training and with time to understand the system. It's a mentality thing as well. And what I think we saw today was the results of like one club who's been run very well, just completely outdoing the other team who haven't made good decisions. And when we talk about having players who are ready to buy for Ruben Amorim's system, who can play in a back three, people can get like drawn into that and think, oh, well, we need a specialist wing back. And yes, of course, United will need to do that, I think. But the traits are the same. And this is where this new system of people, Wilcox, Barada, Vivell, and Amorim, the key ones that I'm talking about here. This is where that's it. This group of people have to get these decisions right with the players that they sign. And the thing that stood out to me today, really, and I think Carl Anker mentioned it to Ruben Amorim as well in the press conference after the game, the physical side of this. United are miles off, absolutely miles off. And as much as we can talk about specialist right centre backs and left centre backs and wing backs and central midfielders, the way that football's going, you need to have, ideally, if they're tall and fit and can cover every blade of grass, that's kind of they have to obviously have the abilities with the ball as well, and without the ball and the mentality. But the physical aspect of Premier League football has never ever been as stark as it is now for me. And some teams like United and like these big clubs are going to play so many matches, and it's really difficult to maintain. Like I look at Kobe Mainu and Mamadou Ugarte, for example, and I think both of them have a good shot of working in this system. And Ugarte obviously did it at Sporting. But the volume of games and the intensity that they play at and what is required for them to play at means that we need depth underneath them. And it's simply not there at the moment. I know Toby Collier's integrated into the team and he's starting to show some really good traits. But more is needed there. Rotation options are needed there. And think of how far down the line that is. I don't know, because there's so many other positions in this team which are going to be the centre-back positions and the wing-back positions in particular, I think, and people talking about striker as well. All of those positions are going to be of the highest importance. But I think the midfield is so incredibly important to making this system work, and so are the wing-backs. I think that middle four changing will change United's dynamic completely. But I suppose I wanted to say this. Don't get hung up on, can he play in a 3-4-3 or a back five or whatever? Ideally, yes, they can. But I think the trait that they need to be looking for is everything I just mentioned in terms of the physicality that people have, the speed, the ability to cover ground. That is what United lack. And I think the mentality is a big thing as well. And dealing with playing for Manchester United when you kind of keep losing matches at home, that's incredibly difficult. And look, when there's been so many players in the past who've signed, and then like Bruno Fernandes, great example, signed, had a great 18 months, 2 years, and like lifted United up levels, and then eventually was engulfed by the malaise of this football club, which seems to bring everything into it to rot a little bit. And the fact of the matter is, this needs to turn around and it needs to change by wholesale. This is going to be there's going to be a lot of changes that are going to happen over the next couple of years, I think. Um, I think there's players who are scarred, I guess, by the defeats that have come about recently. And Amorim said in his post match press conference as well. I waited to record this to watch that first. He said the players towards the end they weren't in the same positions, and this is not acceptable. They weren't in the right positions. They were doing whatever they wanted themselves. Amorim is going to need people who live by every single word that he says, because there are players who feel like they need to take ownership and maybe work outside of the system that Amorim's trying to implement, and it's to the detriment of the team on the whole. Amorim is going to need a group of people who are willing to absolutely go to the ends of the earth to make this system work. And I don't think there's a group of players in there at the moment that is able to do that, and we're seeing the results of it. So, look, I think that's the big thing that I wanted to get across today, is that there's a lot of pressure on to get this rebuild right, to make sure, I think, that like Brighton have done, is to sign or to approach the market. Obviously, United have a massive wage bill, and they need to sort that out first. I think that's the big thing, and try and raise money through player sales, and that's why people like Alejandro Garnacho are talked about as potentially sellable assets. That's a whole other conversation. But obviously, that needs to be cleared out first. What needs to happen from here is that there needs to be a joined up thinking process, which I think we didn't get in the summer because of the decision around Ten Hag and then Ashworth leaving. I think there was some kind of uh, disagreement there, or a lack of understanding of the same philosophy, or a difference in philosophy, and that's what has ultimately led to Ashworth's departure. But what I think you do have in there now is, in those people that I've named, a unit of people who are now all on the same page in terms of the kind of players they're approaching to sign, the ones that they want, and good decisions like that, who are not only capable. I know that Amorim's here and is I still completely have faith in what he will do in the end, in the long term. But United need to make decisions which will benefit themselves beyond Ruben Amorim. They have to look at it like that. Simply have to. And I think football has evolved to a point where the physical aspect of it is so important, and more important than it's ever been. And there's been so much evidence of it this season, not only in Manchester United, but you look at the drop off in Manchester City over the last 6 months, and the fact that they are now going into the transfer market. Whatever you think of the off field stuff with them, and whatever happens, I don't know. I'm not going to speculate. But they are signing players generally, like the defenders that they're signing, who are young, quick, physically capable, and have the technical abilities and the technical package to be able to deal with the demands of Premier League football as well. Because the players that they have had and have been using over the last few years just don't seem to have the legs or the mentality for it anymore. You look at players like Raheem Sterling and the drop off there, it's kind of sad to see. The drop off in some other players as well. There was another player that I wanted to mention alongside him. But, I think this is a young footballer's game, more so than it's ever been for me. And you need to kind of have those physical capabilities. Otherwise, you're not able to compete at the highest level in this Premier League. And United, unfortunately, are through a series of bad decisions and expensive ones over the last few years, now have a group of players who are not able to play on the front foot, not able to sustain attacks, are much more adept at playing transition football, as Amorim has said. And Amorim, as much as transition is important to him, he wants to assert that kind of dominance in the final third as well. And United, they're just nowhere near it at the moment. So this is going to take a lot of training, a lot of time, and a lot of patience from a lot of people, and a lot of change. It really is. And I think the thing for me is that I do have hope in the longer term that good decisions will be made because the people are different. But the United have never been in as difficult a position as this. I don't think. In all the time that I followed them, they've never been in as difficult a position as this because of the accumulation of bad decisions and expensive decisions that they've made. And then you see a team like Brighton who turn up, and one of the goals, I think it was, well, obviously Onana's made the mistake. It was one of the goals. I can't remember which one. But there was one of the Brighton midfielders just powered through the midfield two and opened up the game completely, just powered through the lines. And we've seen that happen so many times to United over the past few years, and especially over the past few weeks as well. There's just so many kind of shortcomings that I see in this team that we know are there. And as much as I was frustrated and disappointed and not surprised, and it obviously the joke goes, United ruining my weekend again. Like it's such a it's difficult to digest, but I wasn't surprised by it. And I think that the kind of approach that I'm taking with this is that as much as we know that another rebuild is on the horizon and this will take time, that's just the way that it is, and that's just the way that it has to be. And Ruben Amorim uses the word suffer so much. He even said that the fans need to suffer a little bit. And that's just, I don't want to accept mediocrity. Of course, nobody wants to. But I think if you just look at the league table as it is right now, with United in the bottom half of it, I think they're 10 points above the relegation places and 10 points off eighth place Aston Villa. Any kind of miraculous push for top four or whatever is not going to happen. And this might just be a season where United are just going to have to accept the position. They're going to go up and down, up and down, up and down. And you might get a good result one week and a bad result the next. And that's just the way that it is. And unfortunately, United are going to have to kind of take it on the chin and deal with that in the best way that they possibly can. But the big thing is that they need to start making much better decisions. And I'm talking about stuff that's off the pitch. And this has been a game, obviously all matches are played on the pitch, but I think what the big difference that I saw for me today was that there's one club who have had a strategy from the very top, who've worked towards it, signed players towards it, hired managers towards it. And ultimately, it allows them to continue to sustain the progress that they've made, no matter who the personnel is. And ultimately, then, if you get everything right, your players end up looking better. You can flip them for profit. And that's what Brighton have done. And the more profit that they make, the more they can reinvest and the higher up the league that they can go. And if there's a ceiling to that, I don't know. And I'm not saying that United should copy the Brighton plan, because they're two completely different football clubs. But it just goes to show how important it is to continually make good decisions. And unfortunately, we just saw two teams today who are poles apart in that aspect of things. And as much as there are things that I disagree with that this ownership have done since it's come into power, the responsibility of this lays with the people that were in charge before this ownership. The people that were put in place who thought that, hey, here's a problem, let's spend 80 million quid on this player to fix it. That was the philosophy. That was where United were. And as exciting as it was for certain people that this big name was coming in to fix everything, and some of them did temporarily plaster over over the cracks, paper over the cracks. But it's beyond that now. What needs to happen, because Ruben Amorim wants this, is he wants a team of players who are willing to absolutely run into the ground for him and go by his every word. And we don't have that at the moment. So it will take time. It's going to take a lot of time, and it will require patience and suffering. And like, as much as I would love to just turn around and say that this will be fixed quickly, it's not going to be. And the quicker that we kind of look at it and we think, all right, give them a chance to sort this out, and not everything is going to be magically fixed in January, and we can. This is so popular to just stick the boot in and go at United so frequently. And look, it's easy, and I could do that as well. But at the same time, I don't want to live like that. And I would prefer to kind of live in faith that there's a new group of people who've proven themselves elsewhere at other clubs, that they make good decisions, and now who are now coming together to fix the mess that we see plays out on this pitch week after week after week. And we know that it's there. We know there's a problem. And unfortunately, just I suppose what we can do is now, and this is supposed to be never too high, never too low. And I don't want to. I hope I've kind of towed the line a little bit, because I think people maybe need, after a performance like that, people maybe need some kind of cheering up a little bit. I think my message is really to just give it a bit of patience, and to not expect too much too quickly, because big change needs to happen yet again. The big thing and the big difference this time will be that the big change needs to be that the picture is longer than this manager. As much as I would love Ruben, I still think Ruben Amorim will succeed here. There needs to be so many lessons taken from so many good football clubs who've turned themselves around, and United need to do that. But the problem that they have coming into this is that they have spent so erroneously over the last few years that they're coming from probably a more difficult place than a lot of football teams. So look, you look at the progress of Brighton, Aston Villa, Bournemouth, Newcastle, and Nottingham Forest, and you think, in Bournemouth's case specifically, I know Nottingham Forest are higher in the league than them, but Bournemouth going to Newcastle this weekend and thumping them, playing some great football, it goes to show, if you get players who are capable of playing, I think the metrics have changed. They really have. I think this is a young players game more than it's ever been before, and United are just going to have to play catch up. But yes, I will be back in the next couple of days to talk about the transfer market a little bit. Anthony potentially leaving on loan, Tyrell Malacia potentially leaving on loan. Endless questions about Marcus Rashford to Ruben Amorim when he's not playing. Casemiro could leave. These kinds of things. I'll be here to talk about the developments in the market in the next few days. But I think I tried to get across today, and I hope I did, my thoughts and feelings on this. As much as it's difficult to digest that United are god awful at the moment, and you can go 1 week from playing really well against Liverpool and Arsenal to playing like they did against Southampton for the majority of the game, and playing like they did against Brighton today. That's just where United are, and it will require patience. It will. And just because I'm trusting in the fact that there's now people in charge making football decisions at the club, and we've never really had that before. It just needs some time to play out, because there's so much on surface stuff and personnel to change. But this has been the Promised Land podcast, and give me a follow on social media at @_ Scott Saunders. Let me know if you agree with me, if you think I'm wrong, whatever, just let me know. At @_ Scott Saunders on X, TikTok, and Instagram, and I'm on Blue Sky as well. The link is in the description. Please subscribe to the podcast on Apple and Spotify for audio. It's also on other audio platforms too. Wherever you get them, I'm sure you will be able to find it. And it's on YouTube as well. The Promised Land, the Manchester United podcast. Please like the video, subscribe, and leave a comment on anything that I've said here. Leave your frustration if you like. But if you just if you're going to continually be frustrated when you keep seeing the same problems that are occurring over and over again and expecting a different result at some point in the near future, it's just not really going to happen. And it's best just to kind of take a step back and just think, God, this club's in a mess. It will take me some time, so I'm just going to adjust my expectations a little bit. That's my approach anyway. You can agree, you can disagree. I hope it helped if you're feeling disappointed or whatever, but or angry, you know. I hope this helped a little bit for you. Never too high, never too low. Until next time, this has been the Promised Land podcast from me, Scott Saunders. See you soon.